Good day everybody, RC GrabBag here, welcome back to the channel. In my last video I weathered some track, showed off a couple of new buildings, gave a demo of the GHB International DD1, and made some pizza in a wood-fired oven. I also hinted to the subject of my next video, which is another wood trestle with the center Howell truss deck bridge. In this video I'll be assembling the trestle to get it ready for installation on the layout. I'll also be giving a detailed look at the newly released Division Point Union Pacific Coal Turbine number 80 as well as a demo run. So my videos to date have been predominantly bridge construction projects, and there's a reason for that. With the exception of this Stone Arch Bridge and the Scale Rock Island Bridge, I'm trying to get all the bridges in a particular area finished so that I can concentrate on the scenery. The area in question is this entire area off to the left where we see the big curved trestle. In this future valley, there's a cluster of bridges which includes this HO scale replica of the Diablo Canyon Bridge in Arizona. Next to this bridge will be the trestle currently under construction, along with some smaller bridges at lower levels. So let's jump into building this trestle. As I mentioned in my last video, I had built a number of trestle bents for a previous layout that never got used, so I will finally be using them now. For this project, the first part of the assembly is to stain the stringer and bracing lumber. So here I've got a bottle of stain mixed up and a plastic tray to protect the work surface. I'm going to brush the stain on, and I don't do this with a lot of precision. I just grab a bunch of sticks and just slather on the stain. I also apply stain to the bents themselves. Here I'm just arranging the sticks in the jar for drying. The bents are stained and dry now, so I'm just getting them organized. Now I'm assembling the heavy stringers that will be directly supporting the track. I'm simply spreading some glue along the length of the stringers and then clamping them together. I need to even off the bottom of the bents, so I'm just putting them into the laser cutter to cut a nice straight line across the bottom of the vertical supports. Of course, you don't need a laser cutter to do this, but it does make for a perfectly level base at the bottom of the bents if that's what you're aiming for. Now it's time to begin putting the pieces together. I drew up a paper template on the computer with lines indicating where the track stringers go as well as the bents. I simply taped the templates to my workbench and did the building right on top of them. And like the previous trestle, I'm building it upside down because the top, of course, needs to be level. So the first thing to go into place is the stringers that will be supporting the track. I have weights holding the track stringers in place, and now I'm ready to put the first bent into place. To get the bents in the proper position, what I like to do is thread a rubber band through the bent around the midpoint and loop the rubber band around the square tool. Then on the back side of the square tool I have a stick holding the loop ends of the rubber band. This setup holds the bent at the perfect vertical angle and allows small adjustments to be made while gluing the bent in place. You can probably use some sort of clamps to do this, but I don't have clamps that are deep enough. Once the glue sets, I simply repeat the steps for every other bent. With all the bents in place, I add some internal horizontal stringers to give the bents lateral strength and ensure they remain aligned, just like the real thing. And now here's how it looks with the internal stringers in place. Now it's time to add the cross bracing. For doing the cutting, I'm using one of these razor blade based choppers to cut the bracing pieces quickly and uniformly. Then I just begin gluing them in place. I now have one set of cross braces in place, and now I just need to do the opposing braces. And after repeating the same steps, I now have the opposing braces in place, giving the bracing that classic X-shaped form that you see here. Now, let's take a break from the trestle building and look at a new brass locomotive from Division Point. This is the Union Pacific No. 80 3-unit coal turbine from Division Point. This model is hand-built brass in HO scale and is factory painted and lettered and has DCC sound pre-installed. The locomotive comes in this beautiful box, and inside is the normal type of foam packaging. This is a sheet describing all the DCC functions, and also included is this spare parts bag. Now let's look at the 3 locomotive pieces. First out of the box is the tender. Detail and paint are excellent. Next we have the center turbine unit. And of course the detail and paint are excellent on this piece as well. And finally the lead unit. And as you might expect, detailing and paint are excellent. Now just enjoy some close-up detail footage. Now let's see and hear it run. Hope you enjoyed this look at Division Point's Union Pacific No. 80 coal turbine. Now let's get back to the trestle build. With all the major sub-assemblies completed, I'm going to start working with the track. After taking some measurements, I'm removing a large portion of the ties from this section of track because there are already ties built into the center Hal truss bridge, so I don't need the ties from the track there. Instead, the rails will be glued directly to the Hal truss bridge ties. Next, I'm just weathering the track using the same methods I used in my last video. I need to straighten the track, and with the stiffness of this micro-engineering flex track, I found that just putting the track on the edge of the ties like this and giving it a few taps with a piece of scrap 1x4 wood on the workbench does a pretty good job of straightening it out. In preparation for gluing down the rail, I'm running a bead of contact cement on the bridge ties as well as the bottom of the rail. With the contact cement in place on the bridge, I now run a bead on the underside of the rail. Next, I'm running a bead of Sobo craft glue on the track stringers. The section of the flex track that has the ties will be mounted here, and the section without the ties, that is just the bare rails, will be bonded to the bridge ties. I'm putting a piece of paper down where the contact cement is so that I can play with the other end of the track and get it lined up. Contact cement can form an immediate bond, so I don't want to chance the rails getting bonded on one end of the track before I work out the alignment on the other end where I have some time to make adjustments before the glue sets up. Now with the track lined up, I'm using this HO track gauge to run along the bare rails and ensure that they have the proper spacing between them. I'm also pressing down pretty firmly to create the permanent bond between the rails and the bridge ties. And now I'm just repeating the steps for the other side. And now I'm just using a soldering iron set to about 700 degrees Fahrenheit to heat the rail about every 2 inches. What this does is heat up and basically vulcanize the contact cement underneath the rail to create a super strong bond. This step of heating the contact cement every few inches was suggested in the how-to videos put out by the people over at Fast Tracks. And I do the same procedure when I'm building my turnouts as well. And now I'm just installing the remaining track sections. And now with all the track in place, I'm going to do a test with some rolling stock. That seems pretty good, and now I'm just going to fill in some gaps with some leftover ties. On each end of the trestle, I want to build timber retaining walls. So for this, I'm going to build 2 more small bents, attach them to the ends of the trestle, and then attach the retaining walls to the bents. Here I have the sticks I'll be using for the retaining wall bunched together, and I'm using one of the bents as a guide to mark the sticks for cutting. Then it's over to the chopper again for the cutting. So here I have a sheet of wax paper on the work surface because there's going to be some unavoidable glue spillage. Of special note here, the surface I'm building on is a sheet of thin galvanized steel, and I'll be using magnets to hold the parts in place. I've applied stain to the retaining wall sticks, and now I just run thin beads of glue along the edges to bond them all together. Some of the glue is going to ooze out the back of the boards, but that's what the wax paper is for. Now I mount the bents to the ends of the trestle. Here again, the magnets come in handy because they stick to the weights on the other side and keep the bent at the proper angle. And now I'm just applying a little thin CA glue to wick in between the top of the bent and the track stringers. I also need to secure the horizontal stringers to the bent. And now some diagonal cross bracing. And finally, some Sobo craft glue is applied to the outer side of the bent for attaching the retaining wall. And now the retaining wall is installed. Just lining it up here, and then I'll clamp it in place. Repeat the steps on the other end, and there you have it. One important thing to note is that the sides of the retaining walls that were against the wax paper while gluing are facing outwards. Although the glue has dried pretty much invisible, it's best to put that side against the scenery that will eventually cover it up from view. I wanted to also point out that on one side of the bridge I installed a third rail to make that side dual gauge because I plan on sharing this bridge with the narrow gauge line. And here's how the structure looks so far. So that brings us to the end of the model railroading portion of the video. In my next video, I'll be finishing up some detail work on the trestle and then installing it on the layout. And now, we've reached the random topic portion of the video. And this time, we're taking a trip to Portugal, our first post-COVID overseas trip. So if you're interested, stick around, otherwise see you next time.
One bubble. Sure? Yeah. She wrote it.
There on the top of this column of the bridge, we have an elevator and you can go till the top, and then you have a belvedere.
They just go around here.